Let's get stuck into the back pages this morning, and we'll start with the Irish Times. Jackie Tyrrell's column leading the way, as you can imagine. Transformed Tipp showing real hunger for crown. It's interesting stuff, and it's this cliche about Tipperary that, to quote Jackie Tyrrell, when Tipp win in All-Ireland, they win it well. They leave nobody in doubt about how talented they are, about how far they are ahead of everybody when they're on their game. But in 2011 and 2017, they fell flat. They hadn't the answers that were needed to win back-to-back. Why was this? They were beaten in games they shouldn't have been, and they had players not reaching their potential. Why? They had internal issues, disciplinary problems, lads put off the panel, lads dropped for non-hurling reasons. It's like they have a split personality, or maybe a split mentality. When they're in their groove and playing scintillating hurling, it takes a fair team and an animal to stop them. I don't think 15 Chuck Norrises would have stopped them in the 2016 All-Ireland final. And it's all true, really. This has been one of the biggest enigmas in recent sport, the idea that Tipperary can be so irresistible one year and fall flat the next.
Be interesting to see what the turnaround or the turnover rate on the team would be, the actual starting 15 from the last number of years. You know,
not huge.
No, I mean, all of the main men are still there, and they're still playing in their positions, in their preferred positions. But there's no doubt about it. I think, you know, I would not have known what he's trying to imply there with regard to, you'd hear the odd thing about the panel and a fella being kicked off, and next thing he come back on or he's gone, and you'd hear it, but they seem to keep it fairly tight as regards the news emanating out of the camp. But it's hard as well. It is hard to kind of keep that level. You know, it is hard to keep it. And when you haven't had it for a while and you get it, there's always going to be a bit of a lull. But certainly Sheedy seems to have a serious handle on them. You know, just how to treat them and the respect they give him back, which is a big, big thing.
Yeah, for sure. And that is something that's covered in the Irish Examiner, which we'll get to in a moment. You've got a couple of other papers.
Yeah, I've got the Times in England. It's just going over about the Norway-England match last night. England winning 3-0 to go into the World Cup final, where they play. It's either France, I think, isn't it?
France or the United States, which is on tonight. Yeah, great game.
Which is going to be a serious, serious game. So yeah, Phil Neville will be happy after the goings on in the last game, where they were, let's just say, tried to be bullied off the park.
Well, to be fair, maybe some more of those goings on is what Norway should have resorted to, because they let England play around them last night. England completely outclassed them. Norway, I thought, were very, very poor. To be fair, I haven't watched much of Norway in this year's tournament, but they were built up as the team that had managed to rally in the face of adversity when their best player and the world's best player wasn't even in the World Cup. And I thought they were very, very poor last night. Caused a few problems for England, but I thought England were comfortable. In terms of getting to a World Cup semi-final, it's been straightforward for them, from what I can see. But that semi-final is going to be one step up.
Yeah, but I watched. Oh, sorry, was it? Yeah, sorry, into the semi-final. I watched the Japan game, England-Japan there not so long ago. I just haven't had a chance to watch much of it because of the time in the evening. And I was impressed by them, because Japan were actually really, really good, technically excellent, and had them under serious pressure with about 10, 15, 20 minutes to go in the game, and were really pushing. And then England got a great breakaway goal, you know, and just showed a lot of power. A lot of you know, technically good players, but a lot of big girls at the back who are well able to handle themselves and play the ball out. So yeah, it should be good.
Yeah, it's for sure. That's actually the one thing. There was one chance that Norway had last night. It was like a point-blank save from the England keeper. Ball falls to an England defender, and they just play the ball out of the back. There's no sort of hoofing or panicking in that situation, which kind of means that Neville's got them playing a brand of football in which they're really, really confident in their own ability. So I think they're going to put up a fight in the semi-final, and it's going to be great. But that game tonight is going to be a cracker, you'd imagine. The Irish Examiner sports section leads with "In Search of Change," and this is the Derek McGrath column that I mentioned. He's talking about the boldness and intuition of Davy. Davy's one of the elements in it. He also talks about Liam Sheedy, as I mentioned in this column. He says that before the 2012 Waterford County final, he got the services of Liam Sheedy into his club dressing room, and he spoke passionately about the flow from nervous tension to excitement and adrenaline, but particularly about the need for an edge, what we in the room interpreted as being the perfect merger of savage discipline and attitude. Nothing silly or stupid, but no backward step or sign of weakness to be conveyed. Like, he talks about his body language being hugely impressive. Often overlooked, though, is his ability to delegate responsibilities. He has huge personalities around him in Tommy Dunn, Dara Egan, Owen Kelly and Eamon O'Shea, but all are united with a common goal in mind: what's best for Tipperary. And the one team, especially in hurling, that this just gives you a striking reminder of is Kilkenny. This intense savagery that great Kilkenny team brought to the table, which obviously Sheedy brought to the table as well in 2010, and this complete lack of ego, especially on the sideline, which is something that Leinster Rugby have certainly looked into over the past couple of years as well.
Yeah, and it is important. Ego can be a good and a bad thing, but on the sideline, you have to have a certain amount of it. But I definitely think if you're not able to delegate and you're not able to say, listen, this is your role, I want you to take it and go ahead and do it. I don't need to necessarily check up on you. I want you to just make sure you can clock in with me. Communication is a massive part of all of that, and the backroom teams. And as backroom teams grow, communication is vital, because there's no way as a manager you can make sure that there's 20 odd people who are all doing what they should be doing, and then if you were to go and check and be on top of it, your head would explode. So you need to pick those 3 to 4 things that you can actually try to control, and then just make sure that whoever has that job is able to do it and is doing it well.
Serious levels of trust required.
Well, there is, yeah. The trust level is a big thing, but the leadership, you obviously have to say, well, listen, this is how I want it to be done. This is my vision, and this is, this is something I'm really strong on. And if people aren't picking up on those things and they keep falling down, well, then you have to have serious conversations. But what you're hoping is the people who are around you, who you've handpicked, understand the language that you're using and are saying, okay, this is something I really need to get on top of. So if a player needs a conversation, it shouldn't have to be, we have to have a conversation about the conversation. It should be just like, listen, Owen, I need you to talk to him. I need to see where his head is at. And straight away, what does that mean? I meet him for a cup of tea or whatever it is, and you try to work it through, and then not necessarily just come back to the manager and say, yeah, I've done that. You come back with some sign of a solution and say, yeah, he's okay, or whatever it is,
You got the Daily Mail there?
Yeah, Daily Mail. Again, another little bit about magic number. You've got a bit on the game last night, but then you've got crowd set to reach over 100,000 mark for both the Leinster and Munster final. So the GAA will be happy about that after a number of figures yesterday. And then an article about Mickey Hart about how he's the man to negotiate the qualifiers better than anyone.
Yeah, he sure is. I think we also have the UK Mail here as well this morning, and the story about Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's pictured in his new Manchester United shirt for the first time as £50 million man will finalise his mega money move today. It's been some journey for him. This time last year he wasn't exactly in a great position. Crystal Palace moved him to a right back. Now he's a Manchester United right back, the second or third most expensive English player of all time now. So big signing for Manchester United. We can see him in his kit there, so that's going to happen today.
Yeah. Wow.
The back page of the Sun leads with this big story: lamps under lights. Frank to take charge of Chelsea for first time in friendly at Dalymount. So this is a massive windfall for a couple of League of Ireland clubs. His first game in charge of Chelsea, Frank Lampard, is going to be at Dalymount Park. They're going to be up against Bows at 7:45 on Wednesday, July the 10th, before Richmond Park at 2 p.m. on Saturday, July the 13th, up against St. Pat. So it's I'd imagine those tickets are going to be like gold dust. I think about 30 quid a pop, which is probably fair enough if people around here want to go see Chelsea. And that's a quiz question in years to come, I dare say. That Frank Lampard's first game is in Dalymount.
130,000 Pats are due to pocket, and 95 for both. That's serious money.
Huge
Massive money.
Especially when you compare that to the prize money that's actually available in the League of Ireland.
Yeah.
The other story here on the back of the Sun is Neil has Luca him. So this is regards to Luca Connell, who's left Bolton Wanderers, and Neil Lennon has confirmed that they're keen on landing him. So he's trained at Mick McCarthy's Ireland senior squad, as we know. He was kind of the latest person we were talking about will he, won't he, don the green shirt last month, and he's set to leave Bolton following their relegation from the Championship. But he was pictured at Celtic Park yesterday, and Lennon has said, we believe he's available on a free transfer, and they're interested and discussions are ongoing. So that's a good move, I think, for Luca Connell. Interesting to see if he'll get some first team action. Yeah,
I've got the Independent here, and there's a article on Lukaku saying that United are actually going to reject a move whereby Inter Milan would come in, they'd actually take him on loan and then buy him. So obviously United shelved out, I think it was around 80 million on Lukaku to Everton, and they're a little bit below that.
Yeah, they want that back.
Yeah, they want it back at a minimum. I don't know. I think I'd just take it, whatever you can get.
It looks pretty close as well, and there is talks about some of the names involved in a potential swap, like Ivan Perisic, who was somebody that Manchester United were linked with previously, and people are like, that'd be a great move if they can make that happen. So something's changed here now where perhaps you don't want Perisic. I don't know, it's...
What's your take on Lukaku?
Okay, I'm very sympathetic towards Romelu Lukaku. I thought he was a great signing for Manchester United at the time. I thought he's got a bit of a a tough doing from Manchester United fans and football fans in general.
Due to his weight issues, his laziness,
well,
the fact that he doesn't score goals.
There's a number of reasons there why those people might actually be correct about Romelu Lukaku, right? Like, I thought I was suddenly like a Cheshire cat when Solskjaer started and Lukaku started. Who was it? It was against Arsenal in the FA Cup, and Lukaku was down the right wing playing unbelievably. I was like, look, he is a footballer. Yeah. Like, this idea that a professional footballer doesn't have a first touch just seems so ridiculous to me. Clearly that can't be true. Yeah. But the more time has gone by, the more the months have gone by, and the more the season dwindled away from Manchester United, I was like, I was clearly wrong about Romelu Lukaku. Like, I think if they can take what is it, the money they're talking about here, 56?
Yes, it was 62.7. Yeah, to be exact.
Like, some people would say that's
9 million and then 53.7 at the end.
A lot of people will say that is an emergency button, press immediately. You press that button immediately at Manchester United, and as Rio Ferdinand said, you get the forms in front of Inter Milan immediately and you get them to scribble down on that line ASAP. A lot of people will think that. I think he will do good things in his career yet. I just don't think the Manchester United scenario suited him. He didn't help himself, and he openly admitted that his weight was a problem after last year's World Cup. Roberto Martinez had told him to alter his weight a little bit, and he struggled to get it back on side for Manchester United, but ultimately that can't help you control the ball. And I don't know, it just seemed like a real crisis of confidence when the ball was just hopping off his feet. This is a fella who scored loads of goals for Everton. This is a fella who managed to bang the goals on a regular basis in patches for Manchester United. I think it was the level to which he was criticised was harsh. I felt that this guy can't play football. He's useless.
I know,
it was a bit harsh. I think
might have been the people around him. You know, might have been when certain individuals were in the team that they just didn't play to his strengths.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that, and maybe people will say he's average, and maybe at worst that's what he is. The back page of the Irish Daily Star this morning is "That's my Roy." O'Neill backs Keane to shine on his own. Rue says, "Enjoy United, Aaron." That's Wayne Rooney talking about Manchester United's new big money signing. Kylie then says, "We can work it out." He's called on his men to work like dogs this weekend. And Kieran Donaghy saying, "Pissed off Dubs will use funding flack as fuel." We'll get back to that in just a moment, but you've got the Mirror before that.
Yeah, I've got the Mirror. You've got it again, and the article about Paddy McNair. Celtic lodge £5 million sterling bid to lure Northern Ireland star McNair to the Scottish champions. So that's a big one. 24 years of age, didn't realise that actually. And then Conlon loses chance for Nikitin revenge as injury hits the Russian. So that was the rematch that isn't going to happen. But what they're saying is that they're going to raise him up a level now, and they're saying that basically the next fight is going to be the biggest fight of his career so far.
Well, they have to say that now after that falling through.
Well, he also needs to start probably going up the gears a little bit, you know.
Yeah. The back page of The Guardian is, "It's a typical English thing. People want us to fail at the World Cup," says Bairstow. That's in relation to the cricket. And then the World Cup. Lionesses roar into semi-finals. An impressive England opened the scoring after 3 minutes to sweep past Norway in their World Cup quarter-final.
Yeah, and then I've got the Herald, and it's a blue bonanza. That's that story about Chelsea visiting Pats and Bulls. And then you've got Stephen Bradley, the Shamrock Rovers boss, basically saying that regardless of tonight, that the race for the title isn't over yet when they face Dundalk. And you've got a piece of Kieran Whelan talking about Andy McEntee and saying that he needs to focus on the Royals' woes.
He sure does. I think he's kind of in the Andy McEntee camp as well when it comes to the media dealings, that got a bit of sympathy for him. The Racing Post front page goes with day 2 of the Derby Festival, Friday night delight. It's Coolmore versus Godolphin at the Curragh, as Pink Dogwood goes head to head with Wild Illusion. And then on the back, it's Proteas playing for Pride. Sri Lanka 7-4 to follow up. England shock Sri Lanka against South Africa at 10:30 this morning. Just a couple of more stories you want to get to before you wrap up the paper section today, and the Gaelic Life is kind of leading the agenda on this. Let's have a look at a couple of the articles here. Caelan Mooney and Malachy O'Rourke. Malachy O'Rourke here, first of all. Monaghan County Board mustn't panic. This is with regards to finding the solution there in terms of the vacant managerial role. And then Caelan Mooney is set to go to London. A quick mention then as well of Conor Glass. There's an interview with him with Niall McCoy. And the piece we want to get into in a bit of depth now is Kevin Cassidy. He's got a column here saying Dublin begrudgery leaves a sour taste. And we've got the piece here just to go through a couple of the lines that kind of sum up his point of view on the whole Dublin situation. He says, "We have a tendency on this wonderful island of ours of wanting to destroy anyone or anything that is working well or doing well. For some reason we can't just applaud and respect hard work and success. When Kerry dominated the football, or when Kilkenny recently dominated the hurling scene, did we call on Croke Park to split those counties in two, or demand their funding be slashed? So you can imagine what the tone of this article is. He's defending the Dubs. He's really railing against the idea that the funding has led to this Dublin level of success. He talks about the current team, and he says they've been there since the beginning with regards to Cluxton, McMahon, McCauley, Brogan, Kilkenny, McCarthy, and they've been the backbone of what they built. None of those players are as a result of direct Croke Park funding. People will then argue that it's Dublin's conveyor belt of talent that sets them apart. The next group to come through are the likes of Mannion, Scully, Howard, etc. These guys, like the rest before, were produced by volunteers in their clubs, just like the rest of us, and money again played no part, and on it goes. I'm not sure what you think about this. It's one side of the argument is that the funding is a direct responsibility for Dublin's success, and the other side is funding has nothing to do with it. The answer may lie somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and I think it does lie somewhere in the middle, and I think it's a chicken and egg situation whereby there is no denying when you put down the cold hard facts and the numbers, you can see, well, here's the X amount going to Dublin, and here's the rest of the money that went to the rest of the country, right? But then people on the Dublin side of the camp will bring in obviously the population and the playing numbers and say, well, actually, if you did it per head and where did the figures come in? But regardless of all of that, I talked about this last Sunday after the game with Joe. There was a decision made that the games in Dublin, as the capital city and as a place where it would have the most market, needed to be upped, and the investment in it had to happen. And at the end of the day, whether people like it or not, the GAA is basically now a corporate entity. It is business. It has, balances. It has to balance up. It has incoming, it has outgoings, and like any corporation, it has to look at where do we get our best bang for the buck. The most times that they will fill, especially in football parlance, is when the Dubs are playing in Croke Park. That's when they're going to make their most money. That's when they're going to get the biggest crowds. What has unfortunately happened for them in the strategy that they took on is the unintended consequences of the fact that it got so big, so strong, that it just wiped everyone else in front. And actually it brought the game down a level as regards an attraction and as regards entertainment value. So yes, you have increased the player power and increased the actual the amount of people who play the game in Dublin.
The presence in the capital, that was the aim.
Correct.
It's been carried out incredibly successfully.
And you tick the box on that one, absolutely. You'd say, well, you see the amount of kids who are playing, it's massive. Rugby and soccer looked like it was going to take, and they've been pushed back to the so much so that soccer has even thought about having to change its season, and stuff like that, underage and all those different things. I'm not saying that's the only reason for it, but if anyone was doing it, it would be the right reason, that you have it all going kind of, running along for the calendar year. But my point is that you end up building this behemoth, and then it just starts to consume everyone in front. So very much, who's at fault there? Jim Gavin's not at fault. None of the players are at fault. None of these volunteers are at fault. But you can't either not say that there's loads of volunteers and great people in other counties, and other people are trying to do their best with what they have and trying to improve the game and trying to close the gap and everything else. So there is, I think, it is very much the funding and the money and all of that was a situation where it built it from the ground. Like, I remember being involved with Meath, and I ended up going in to play with St. Oliver Plunkett's, I think it was around from about 2012 on. And I remember saying to some of the fellas off the Meath team who I was very, very close with, I was saying that we were doing fitness tests with St. Oliver Plunkett's, and some of the lads who were on the panel of the St. Oliver Plunkett's panel were in better shape than the fellas who were on the Meath team. And they were, in better conditioning. And they had been doing that conditioning work for a number of years. Like, I saw stuff in there that you would never, you didn't see in a club team in Meath, only for the last few years. So there was always steps ahead. Now, those the resources that go into doing that, gyms, watt bikes, Airdyne bikes, physios on call, nutritionists, that all takes money. Coaches who are being put into each club, so at underage level you're coaching properly rather than, Anthony Moyles down there, or someone else's father or someone else's mother down there, and just kind of winging it for the morning.
Yeah, like, volunteers can learn from professionals. This idea that volunteers don't get paid, it's fair enough, the work they're doing is for free, but that doesn't mean that what they're working with is free, or what they've learned from is free.
Correct.
Like, money makes people working for free better.
Absolutely.
I just find this volunteer argument really patronising to the weaker counties who have the same appetite for success, but just don't have whatever it is, the training or the education or whatever it is.
The access.
Like, I think, as I say, I think in my view the answer is somewhere in the middle here, that this funding has allowed Dublin to capitalise on what they've got. Other counties aren't being given the same opportunity to capitalise on that talent. They're losing their talent, it's going abroad. It may even be within Ireland in terms of rural depopulation. If Dublin have a young player, chances are they've got a much higher chance of making sure that player becomes a senior inter-county star, a bigger chance than any other county.
Well, here's a question for you with regard to resources and stuff. You never ever hear of a talented Dublin player being discussed in Aussie rules.
Well, one famously did his U-turn.
One. Yeah. But you know, like, really...
James Madden last year, says Tommy. But
okay, the Ballyboden
it's a short
guy.
list.
It is. Like, I mean, it's not the Ballyboden. I think it's the Ballyboden player. Like, I mean, he did the tests and he blew absolutely everyone out of the water.
Right.
This individual. But you can imagine that Aussie rules was definitely looking at Fenton over the last number of years and see the player that he has turned into. But look at the amount of players that Kildare have lost. You know, Meath have lost a number of players over the last number of years. Like, Kerry did their damnedest to hold Clifford.
Still lost a couple.
Yeah, and like, I'd say, you know, probably had to meet Clifford in very much in the sense of, we'll put you through college, we'll do this, you know. So there was a lot of resources that went into that. But even below that level, I'm talking about 17, 18-year-olds coming through who they're picking out and going, right, these are the guys who, when they hit 19, we could, like, so there's now, that also comes with the choice of, well, listen, you have the chance of being in a team that are potentially going to win All Irelands and all the attention that comes with that. Your profile will be big. And then you weigh it up against, well, how much money am I going to actually make in Australia? Is it, you know, I'm all the way over that side of the world. Okay, so there are other factors. But the point of the matter is that Dublin have used the money very, very well. And regardless of that money now, if I was a sponsor, and I mentioned this last Sunday as well, who do you want to be with? Well, you want to be with the team that's going to have the most exposure. So they have an ability now to do pre-match receptions, to do post-match receptions, to do, you know, charity fundraisers or fundraising events during the week outside of, like, I mean, massive things where big companies will get behind it. They'll sell tables to big companies. Companies want to be associated with the Dublin team. There is this aura around the Dublin team that, you know, there's a calmness, there's a leadership, which there is. But, you know, all of those things are very, very well when you're winning games and you're winning All Irelands. And again, it goes back to, well, what's first and what's second, the chicken and egg. And people will hold themselves up and say, well, you know, this is the way we behave, which is fantastic. But companies, as I say, will want to be associated with that. So there's already an ability to generate revenue.
Yeah.
A massive amount of revenue that other teams don't have and other counties don't have.
Take a county like Meath, for example. How much young talent have they lost?
Well, the one that jumps straight to my mind is Conor Nash. You know, like, this is a guy who he's 6'4". Jesus, he could be 6'5". He's well able to motor. Like, I mean, he's fast. He's well equipped for the modern game. Like, you know, if I was thinking about, you know, you have him, like, you just put him straight in on Fenton last week, and I don't think you'd necessarily have any worries about him. Like, he's that type of a player. He solves a big problem for Meath. And he's that type of a guy who solves a big issue for lots of things. Like, midfield has become a major issue in the modern game because of the fact that you can catch the ball and mark the ball now. And
let's not forget that the players that are being lost to Aussie rules are usually the cream of the crop. It's not like, one or two players could make a difference. Chances are they'd be the leader in that team.
Absolutely, leader in the team. You know, like, I mean, and you think about Kildare, you think about Laois. There's plenty of teams that have lost them. Cork. You know, Cork have been decimated over the last number of years from losing some of their brightest and best talent. So, and again up north. So it's, you know, I definitely think you're right. If we went back on 10 years ago, I just think that there was a lot of work done in the 90s and the early 2000s that wasn't necessarily seen, right? And it wasn't seen by the rest of the country. Okay, and there was money and there was things that the building blocks were being laid. And really the fruition of that is now really the last number of years. It took that amount of time, and it does take that amount of time. Like, I see what's being done in Meath, and I see what's being done in other counties like Kildare, you know, around, and the population and all that helps, but it takes time.
Of course it does.
It takes time to come true.
Yeah, it really does. It's something, no doubt, that we'll come back to as the summer rages on. Kieran Donaghy really saying that it's just going to fuel the fury in the Dublin dressing room this year, and that we're perhaps a little bit too hard on the
I don't know.
I'll
just say last thing. Like, I mean, you know, Cassidy says, you know, hopefully this time next year, he was talking about one of the guys on the Donegal team, you know, he'll be back to the green and gold of Donegal, because unlike a lot of others, we were just putting the head down and trying to bridge the gap. Like, I think that is, like, Meath aren't jumping up and down and saying, like Andy McEntee said, Dublin are a great team, we just have to try to bridge the gap, and everyone in Meath has to try to do what it takes. And Cian O'Neill said the same thing. Everyone realises that they have to try to bridge the gap. I don't think you're finding too many managers who are jumping up and down. I think it's people outside like ourselves who are saying, trying to bring the fact up about the funding.